audio rolling. Let's turn on the camera.
I rebuilt my wiring harness. Don't be daunted by this project. It is complicated, but you can do it. After all, you're a biker. You can do anything, right? Here's the old one. I took the casing off so I could see everything. A couple of things you'll need. A wiring diagram if you're going to reproduce exactly the stock factory wiring. This is indispensable. Some tape. Make sure you use the right kind. You don't want the sticky crap. And one of these. A ratcheting crimper for all your connectors. This is $30, worth every penny. Let's get started.
So the first thing you need to do is take out the old harness. The best policy is to label everything as you disconnect it as to what it goes to. It'd be a lot easier to reproduce later on the bench. Pull things out one by one from the tail. I just started the tail because everything is smaller and it was easier to get through everything. I did have to take the coils off and just set them on the engine. But once you cut any zip ties off or anything that's holding it on there, it should come out fairly easily, step by step. Just take your time. The hardest part will be up here at the headlight because that's where everything connects to the gauges and switches on the handlebars. But once you get it out, it'll look something like this. Here's where I set up my workspace. I've got my wiring kit, some heat shrink, and I laid it out, always with the diagram available, and put it on paper and labeled each pigtail as to this corresponding parts on the bike. I laid out a piece of plywood and thumbtacked some Velcro strips, cable ties actually, and started to run the wiring through those so everything keeps its shape and you can keep track of where everything is. Now I had the old one right there, so it was easy to refer to what was connected to what, and just make it exactly the same and recheck your diagram now and then. Once I was satisfied with everything being laid out, I started to check and recheck every connection to make sure that every red wire went to every red wire it was supposed to go to black, whatever the original was designed to be. Here's what it looks like before I started with connectors. It looks huge, but when you tape it down, it conforms to a much smaller size. So here's how you use the crimper. Any of your terminal ends, whether they're bullets like this is a female bullet, male bullet, or any of the small the flag connectors or contacts that go inside the multiple push connectors, or your ring terminals, they're all the same, just might be different sizes. This goes in here. You strip your wire to fit. You can release this if you don't want to tighten it down. Strip your wire just so it's long enough to be crimped in this section, and the wire casing is crimped in this section. And then again, you place it in here depending on the size. These are labeled. Put your wire in there, crimp it down at ratchets, and you can adjust how far this will clamp down by changing this. You might have to experiment with a few of them. Just don't forget to put this insulation on the wire first, depending on what type of connector it is, so that after it's crimped you can slide that over it. So once you do crimp that down, when it bottoms out, it releases, and that should give you the perfect crimp. So if you want to reuse connectors like this, It's entirely possible, and all you need to do is replace the ends if they're bad. Or if you're using new wires, you need to put new ends on them. You need a removal tool like this. You could probably make your own out of an old screwdriver. Just grind it down to the size. These go in here, and there are little tabs that will release when you push up against them. That connector. This is the little tab right here that locks in when you push them in. Then you can either cut these off and put new ones on, or use your new wires, put new ends on them, and then use these same old connectors. If you put them in the right way, will lock in. Then I started to put connectors on. This is the part that goes to the tail lights. And start taping things. Make sure you use the right tape. I use 3M Temflex 1700. It does stick to itself, but it doesn't leave the sticky residue. This is really time consuming, but well worth it in the end, putting all the connectors on and all the tabs that go in the connectors. I bought new connectors. I could have used the old ones over again. They were in pretty good shape, but this way the only thing that's old are the components on the bike that these plug into, and I know that I can track that down more easily if I have issues in the future. But this is what the finished product looks like. The new harness is in, plugged into all the accessories that were already in existence. I have yet to hook up the coils, but that's ready to go. We got this routed. Everything's hooked up over here. I don't have the regulator rectifier plugged in because I wanted to replace the connector on that, which I've done with all new ends. They weren't burnt, but the connector was shot. And haven't hooked up the mains to the positive side of the battery yet. This is my new accessory fuse and relay for the front plugs. Got one that's going to be hooked directly to the battery for the back, so I can plug my charger in or any accessories, cameras, phones inside the box, so they'll be charging all the time. And I did plug the lights in, everything works, and they look a lot brighter than before. Either it's because there's better ground or all new wires. Hopefully it's because of both, and I haven't wasted my time. Alright, so I think I have the routing sorted out, more or less. And we're going to try to crank it over.